Well, April showers have brought May flowers, and that includes amazing new books blossoming on the shelves all the time at McNally Robinson Booksellers. Chris Hall is back with us for the May edition of What to Read. Hello to you again.
I've never felt more bedecked with flowers after that introduction. Thank you, Nolan.
We can make that happen on a more regular basis if you like. So many new great titles to talk about. 5 as we do every single month here on the show. And the first one is called The Book of Records. Now, before we get to that, though, speaking of records, I understand from a couple weeks ago, because we haven't had a chance to talk about this, that there was something really special that happened on the music side of McNally Robinson.
Yeah, that's true. A woman older than usually we would see lined up outside of a record store day came in. She was looking for a Rolling Stones album. She found one, but she couldn't find the other one. And she left. We didn't get her name, but then we somehow realized that I guess she told us that she was the wife of a regular customer who is now in palliative care, and his grandson listened to the records with him. So that's why she was there to buy these records. And then after she left, we discovered we did have the record she was looking for, but we didn't have her name. So we had to put it out to social media. We went on to CTV News, and we did, her daughter saw that and communicated with us. So we got the record into her hands, then into his hands. Grandfather, grandson listened to the record. So yes, a very happy story.
That is so special.
Yeah.
Yes, one more way that McNally Robinson makes dreams come true on an almost daily basis on any of its locations. Okay, so records then of a different kind is the subject of the latest novel from one of my favorite authors, Madeline Tien. Finally, this book is coming out.
Yes, it's been a little while. She is one of Canada's best writers, so you're really onto something. She's her first fiction, it was stories called Simple Recipes. It won 4 awards. And her third novel, Do Not Say We Have Nothing, won the Governor General's Award and was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, which is no small feat. So this new novel is quite ambitious. It stars an adolescent named Lena, who is looking after her ailing father, and they live in a building complex called The Sea. And that's inhabited by a number of eccentric people, including 3 neighbors named Bento, Blucher, and Jupiter. And they bear some resemblance to Baruch Spinoza, Hannah Arendt, and Chinese poet Du Fu, respectively. So the lines of realism blur in this novel, as do the stories these neighbors tell Lena. But when she is finally told her father's account of how they came to reside in the sea, these stories combine, and they really set her on her own path into the future. It's very adventurous. The novel weaves through all these characters and their ideas, mostly their stories, stories of these past figures, big thinkers in our past. Reveals a lot about life lived with art and intellectual effort. It's really a book I got lost in.
Yeah, that sounds like a really ambitious sort of a project to take on. And in a similar vein, it struck me when we were talking last month about the novel Perspectives, as it's kind of getting situated in a quasi-historical fiction sort of a sentiment. And this book, it seems to me, blurs that sort of a line even further to how maybe these stories from history and these characters from history then interact with the present.
It does. In this case, it's like stories from the past tell us about our present, and I get a real feeling of that through here. It's done very lightly. It's not like you're figuring out a puzzle or anything. It's really just the cycles of history, if you want to think of it that way. And present day is a little fraught, and these people have gone through fraught times. So there's a lot of resonance that go through the generations in this case. And it's very good.
Yeah, well, we're very excited about that book. Speaking of these sort of newfound, maybe friends is maybe too strong a word for these characters that move into the sea with Lena in the Book of Records, but there is another book of friends that you have brought with you called My Friends by Frederick Backman.
Frederick Backman, yes. Frederick is our author of the month for May. He's written a number of books, A Man Called Ova, which was made into a movie where they renamed Tom Hanks Otto. And My Grandfather Sends Her Regards and Apologies, another one called Beartown, another called Anxious People. He's fairly prolific. He's, very popular. At the center of this new novel is a painting, and in the corner of this painting are 3 tiny figures sitting at the end of a long pier. Most people don't even notice them. They just assume that the painting is a depiction of the sea. But Louisa, who is an artist, she knows they are there, and she becomes determined to find out the story of these 3 figures. And I'm not giving anything away. It's on the jacket copy, but 20 years earlier, there's a group of teenagers who spend their days laughing and telling stories out on a pier. And the story moves along. We realize, of course, these are the 3 young people in the painting, and the 4th person is the painter. So out of that summer emerges this work of art, and now it's in Louisa's care. And as she gets closer and closer to figuring out the painting's origins, she feels compelled herself unleash her own artistic spirit. Very well told story. Nothing too challenging and too deep, but about the power of art, the power of friendship, process of growing up. There's lots of things to think about in this one.
It sounds like the perfect thing to read on a nice deck chair on May long weekend, perhaps.
You're absolutely right.
Maybe for people who haven't encountered Fredrik Backman's writing before, what is so striking about the way that he writes? You mentioned the very well-told nature of his stories there. What's so striking about his writing that McNally goes, that's a perfect selection for Author of the Month?
We like to think of Authors of the Month as, they don't sit in isolation. Maybe we get a challenging one month, the next month we go a little bit lighter. I would describe Fredrik Backman as a little bit lighter. He has a really nice touch, a lot of humor, but also seriousness. I would say that's the biggest thing is you laugh, you may tear up, you go through a range of emotions, but he also doesn't challenge and push you too hard or anything.
The emotions that you just described, I think, are felt very deeply, it seems, in this next book, The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong.
This one might take you a little deeper into yourself. Have a box of tissues at your side, possibly. Yes, Ocean Vuong, amazing author. He's written a novel called On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous, as well as poetry collections, one called Night Sky with Exit Wounds and Time is a Mother. He has a way with titles, among other things. His writing's very poetic, you won't be surprised to hear. Very good at writing about our inner lives, intimacy and love, both with partners, but as well as family and friends, just our inner lives. And this novel opens up in East Gladness, Connecticut, where 19-year-old Hai stands on the edge of a bridge ready to jump. And he hears someone shout at him, and that voice belongs to Gratzina. She is an elderly widow succumbing to dementia, and she convinces him to take another path. He's convinced, and soon after becomes her caretaker. And the novel tells the story of this unlikely pair as they develop a bond, one built on empathy and spiritual reckonings, heartbreak, but it allows Hai to transform his relationship with himself, but also with his family and his community. And Ocean Vuong is such a good writer. The novel's full of the power of sympathy and love. And I don't know, in this time, I just see such an appetite for cruelty these days that a novel like this just reset me.
Yeah, well, certainly something that's set, not to put too fine a point on it, but it's something that's set in America right now to have that sort of element of compassion and connection. I'm also, again, going back to that thing I do where I try and find the theme to all of the books that you bring in. There's a real theme here of finding relationships and exploring relationships on a very, very deep level. Yeah. How would audiences interact with this kind of an exploration of relationships versus the one that you described in My Friends, which is a bit more accessible? It's a little bit easier to digest. But you were mentioning that Ocean Vuong's writing has a bit more of a poetic quality to it.
Yeah, well, I use the word challenging, but challenging, you've got to pay attention, you've got to focus, you've got to kind of I guess mostly those things. But I always find the rewards of putting in the work of reading a challenging book, at the end of it, you really, you really find something. Something that's light and entertaining is great and can be a good tonic after you've read a big, heavy book. Yeah. But it's, there's a different experience for sure. And some of these authors can really show you things.
Well, right. Well, exploring concepts like our next title, which is A River Alive? by Robert McFarlane.
Yes. Now, Robert McFarlane is the author of lots of books, too. Underland, which was exploring caves. I don't know how he went into some of these caves. I couldn't follow him in some of them. I had to skip some pages.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, exactly.
You skip pages?
Well, a little claustrophobic in some of these spaces.
I see. Yes, fair enough.
I didn't know I had claustrophobia. So he's also written a couple of books called The Old Ways and The Wild Places, and these are about nature and generally speaking, how our relationship has changed with nature over the years. He proposes in this new book that rivers should be treated as living beings, both in our imagination and law. The concept has a precedent, as corporations are already treated as individual human beings in the eyes of the law. So this isn't coming out of nowhere. He argues that rivers all over the world are dying from pollution, drought, and damming, but there is a movement underway to recognize the lives and therefore the rights of rivers. If they had rights, it would be illegal to harm them. So he travels to Ecuador, to a cloud forest, which I didn't know about. Learned about it's like a rainforest, only higher.
Yeah, right.
When it gets into mists and
amazing.
And its rivers. The rivers in this cloud forest are threatened with destruction by gold mining, by Canadian companies, no less. Then he goes to southern India, where there's a desperate battle ongoing to save the lives of polluted rivers, creeks, and lagoons all over southern India. And then he goes to northeastern Quebec, where the Mutahekau River is being defended from death by damming in a river rights campaign led by the Innu people. He's such a good writer. He's stylistically very good, but he also has such a wide breadth of reading, everything from literature that I love right through all kinds of things. And of course, adds the work of journalism. He actually visits these places. He actually goes and goes camping in these cloud forests, among other things. And he finds the people to tell him the stories directly. So it's a great combination of things.
Yeah. So this is the second book in 2 months now that has dove in, pardon the pun, to an exploration of water. So last month, actually one of the live guests that McNally Robinson hosted was Leanne Batasamasake Simpson and the theory of water. And back in April, you described her book as having a very sort of unique, sort of even scholarly approach to exploring water and our relationships with it. How does this exploration by Robert McFarlane maybe add on to that sort of exploration of the life of water and our relationship with it, and therefore maybe the responsibilities that we then have to care for it as an entity that needs to be honored and respected in the same way that people do?
Well, you've said a lot of it right there. You're definitely onto something, because as I was reading Is a River Alive, I was definitely thinking back to the theory of water. There is a very interesting coincidence of timing, but confluence of ideas for sure. He comes at it a little bit. She tackles it a little maybe more spiritually. He gets at the spiritualism, but he's interviewing other people to do so. Very complimentary, I guess, is what I would say. He travels farther and wider. She stays at that creek by her home, which gives it a different kind of effect. I absolutely was struck by the similarities between the two for sure.
Now that we're officially past the melting season, we are definitely into exploring water through so many different avenues of art. One more book to explore, and that is something by one of this city's best authors, certainly one of the most prolific authors operating in town right now, David A. Robertson, and his new book, 52 Ways to Reconcile.
Yes, absolutely. David Robertson, no stranger to us. He's literally written bookshelves of books for children, for young adults, as well as for adults. So 52 Ways to Reconcile is the title. The subtitle is How to Walk with Indigenous Peoples on the Path to Healing. So I've spoken many times over the years in this What to Read about the importance of these books on reconciliation in this country, and this is an accessible, friendly contribution that David's made. It's meant for non-Indigenous people who are asking themselves, what can I do? So this is literally 52 ways to answer that question. Very doable, all very meaningful, everything from watching a movie to reading a book to visiting an Indigenous restaurant. to attending a powwow. It's 52 suggestions for 52 weeks. So that means as also that the idea of reconciliation stays present in our minds for a whole year. That's an important part of it. Also, the benefit of the connections you'll make over the course of this project while learning and listening, and will go a long way to building stronger communities, living together with everyone.
It strikes me that putting a number to something so large, like the task of reconciliation, helps us to kind of put a grasp to say, here are some very tangible steps that we can then take to achieve this. Even if I think about the 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission led by the late Honorable Murray Sinclair, it's easy when you read these calls to action to kind of put a definition to this very hard to grasp sometimes, or maybe I shouldn't say hard to grasp, but maybe like a very large sort of a subject where you have however many hundreds of years of history and oppression to wrangle with. But in the same way, 52, you're putting it to even to be able to say one a week. Here, go to an Indigenous restaurant. How many of those are there? Amazing restaurants in the city of Winnipeg. David Robertson also, in addition to writing books like this, also a very celebrated children's author. So I would imagine also that it's something that might be accessible for families to take on.
Yes, absolutely. I hadn't thought of that, but you're absolutely right. Most of the examples that I can think of offhand are, very easy to include families with. So that is definitely it. I should also add that he is going to be at the store to talk about this. So you can add a 53rd or 54th to his list if you like. And that's May 22nd. It's a Thursday at 7 p.m. It'll be in our atrium as always in the Winnipeg store. So that should be fun. But you're right. When you're speaking, the saying, the longest journey starts with the single step. So if you don't take that single step, you will never get there. So So you do, 52. Here's 52 steps.
That's fantastic. Those books, once again, 52 Ways to Reconcile by David A. Robertson, Is a River Alive by Robert McFarlane, The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong, My Friends by McNally Robinson's Author of the Month, Frederick Backman, and The Book of Records by Madeline Tien. We'll have a full breakdown of these books at our website, classic107.com, and the Classic 107 app. Chris Hall, as always, thank you so much for sharing these titles with us here on Morning Light.
Thank you, Nolan.